Thanks. Thank you. I'm going to take his extra time. These blitz sessions are a lot more fun when you're watching your graduate student do them. So, the title of my project was Developing an Alfalfa Hay Export Market in Humid Eastern United States. If you'd like to know the backstory to this project, see me after this presentation. We don't have time for that, but it was an industry and producer-driven project. Everybody in here knows the majority of hay exported from the United States is produced in the arid West. They have excellent conditions for curing that hay and producing a very high quality hay product for export. The big Achilles heel of hay production in the arid West is irrigation, as Dan Putnam and Joe Robbins pointed out yesterday. And there's increasing competition for that irrigation water with urbanization and higher value crops. Now, the advantage and disadvantage of alfalfa production in the humid East is the systems are rain fed. It's great for not having to use irrigation water, but man, would it be nice if we could turn that rain off when we were harvesting that alfalfa, which does not often happen. So the goal of this project was really to look at the ability to containerize hay in the humid Eastern United States. And we have several hay preservative treatments that I'm going to tell you about. And if we can't containerize that hay, there's no way for a hay export market to develop on the East Coast. So what we did was we worked with the local alfalfa producer. We used small square bales as our model because we didn't get enough funding to use large square bales for the project. And we double compressed those bales. We had a hydraulic press, and then we rebanded those bales, all done by hand, not commercially viable, but okay for research. And then our treatments were a control, and that was simply a double compressed bale. And then our first preservative treatment was 5 pounds of propionic acid at harvest, and then that bale was allowed to equilibrate in moisture for 3 to 4 weeks. And then we double compressed it, and we loaded them into these small containers, 24 bales in a small container. Our density of the bales were about 25 pounds per square foot. Our second preservative treatment was 5 pounds of propionic acid at harvest, plus a surface application of propionic acid as we were loading those bales into the containers. And our third treatment was 5 pounds of propionic acid at harvest, along with ammonia and hydrous ammonia fumigation of the container once it was loaded and enclosed. And we did that at 3 pounds of anhydrous ammonia per ton of dry matter. And these were our results. So after 40 days in the containers, sealed containers, we had no difference in crude protein compared with the control and our preservative treatments, and no difference in total digestible nutrients. Not so exciting for my graduate student, but it is important information because it tells us that we can containerize hay in the humid Eastern United States as long as it's dry going into these containers, and we may not need to use a preservative or any additional treatment of that container. We also looked at post-containerization mold and yeast, and although we had a numerical difference in mold and yeast compared with our preservative, from our control to our preservative treatments, it was not statistically significant. There was a lot of variability in the mold and yeast data. It may warrant a closer look in the future in terms of preventing mold and yeast production during containerization. It's important to note that even though we had that elevated level with the control, it was still under what we consider a relatively low mold and yeast count, which was 500,000 colony forming units per gram of forage material. So in closing, I just want to say that we do have the ability to produce a high quality hay in the Eastern United States. It's always going to lack in presentation when we compare it to Western hay, but the quality can be good. We don't really need to treat that hay in terms of our results when we containerize it, as long as it's dry going into those containers. And additional research, we need to look at hay that's harvested at a higher moisture, so 20% or 22%, which would be fairly common if we were trying to beat rain in the humid East. We need to look at mixed alfalfa grass forages. And we need to look at market development and logistics for developing an export market in the Eastern United States. Last thing I'll just mention is that I think as we look at alfalfa production as a whole, it's been declining as the dairy industry declines. And one of the opportunities I think we have is the incorporation of, time's up, I got 2 signs. I'll just say one of the one of the advantages, or one of the opportunities we have, is looking at incorporating alfalfa into row crop production systems in the Midwestern United States. With that, I'm finished.